and welcome to another episode of The Heart of CX. I'm Joanna Palmer, and with me is Max Ball. Max, would you like to introduce our guest?
Boy, would I. We have Nancy Jamison, who is an analyst at Frost & Sullivan, focused on the contact center and customer engagement and customer experience and AI. And I know she's been doing this a long time because I knew her back when neither one of us were old enough to hold jobs yet. And we were working in and around Rome and some other things. We've been reminiscing a little before we started recording about some of that history. But Nancy has done a lot around AI. So we thought it would be great to just, Nancy, have you talk about that a little bit. Do you want to introduce yourself some more, or was that sufficient? If you got a little more background you want to give, and then we'll just jump in.
Not too much. I've just been an analyst for many, many years, and at Frost & Sullivan now for almost a decade. I can't believe it. And
Wow.
Just working on everything touching customer contact. So that also involves what I call the maturing technologies, such as machine learning and speech technologies and AI. So happy to be here.
Awesome. And, you talked a little bit about, you've seen the arc of much of what's happened in the contact center and AI and how it's come into the contact center. Talk a little about that history and specifically how AI intersected the contact center and where all that came from.
Oh, yeah, perfect. As a matter of fact, it's been really interesting because you and I, 30 years ago, we were just happy when we were working on interactive voice response, or IVR, that it was revolutionary when all of a sudden we could just have it, instead of DTMF touchstone, we could just say 1 through 10, and the system would recognize us. And from there, it's just really taken off. And I will have to say that AI, I use the umbrella of AI, and that's machine learning and deep language learning and natural language recognition and all that sort of stuff. So there's a lot of technologies involved underneath. And right now we're employing them, across customer contact and across the organization. So that's been really, really, really interesting to watch that baby be born after so many decades.
Yeah, and so I get it for bots and speech reco and stuff, but how are some of the other ways all this plays?
Actually, that's a really good starting point because right now we have a lot of confusion in the market because people understand, for example, that you have Siri and what would be called a virtual assistant, and everybody's heard about bots, but the technology and the terminology overlaps a lot. So you can have a really dumb bot that just does a few things, or you can have a bot that's like a virtual assistant that really truly acts like an agent with a lot of intelligence in it.
And you could even have
that's one.
Yeah, you could even have a dumb bot that has literally no AI whatsoever, right? It's just
absolutely. Yeah. Well, and then going back to the IVR, we can have very intelligent IVRs out there. We have 10 million of IVRs that act as like the front door to the contact center, so to speak. And now we're either making them more intelligent and putting more technology in them, or we're replacing them with full intelligent virtual assistants, which is really exciting. But you asked me, where else is it being done? And I think that where the confluence of these technologies has started to occur is in process automation. So you have virtual agents, and then you have technologies that we've had out there for probably since 2000 with robotic process automation, or RPA. And what's really exciting about that is that all millions of organizations around the world use RPA and have RPA projects. And for the most part, it started off with having like these, the RPA bots will do process automation for repeatable things within accounting or HR or any place where you have compliance issues and you want to just get rid of tedious, time-consuming tasks. And recently, and I'm saying recently in that it's probably been about 4 years now, we started doing that in the contact center. So if you think about it, contact center is one of the most time intensive and repeatable and error prone or whatever places within any organization. And so it's kind of exciting to see that now we have RPA projects within the contact center. And then another thing is, and this is like that blending again, that we have a blending between virtual assistants and RPA bots. So you can have your customer-facing intelligent virtual assistants, and you can have these RPA-type bots that actually will work alongside an agent. So it's either filling in forms or it's surfacing the right information at the right time. Let's say you have a banking app, someone's doing a mortgage, for example, and you want to check their credit, and you want to be able to tell that agent without the agent searching what kind of credit ranges they'll have. You can have a bot doing that in the background. You can have a bot updating addresses across multiple databases, including maybe some that an agent wouldn't be allowed to go into. So it's kind of exciting, I think, be able to offload tedious work and cut down costs and all those really cool things we talk about.
Absolutely. And I, thinking about just marrying up all of the various different processes with the front office, with customer service and experience, I just, thinking about seeing a glimpse into the future and what the future could possibly hold for contact centers and for the organization as a whole. What do you see there, Nancy, in terms of what the contact center 5 years from now will look like?
I think that actually I haven't thought about this one quite that way yet, so this is kind of off the top of my head. I think what we're going to see is that, and I've talked about this part before, solution providers like yourself and analysts like me, and then also the press, are typically 2 to 5 years ahead of the general customer population, and that we had to start talking about omni-channel for a long time before people really glommed onto it. We had to talk about digital transformation. That's been going on for about 6 years now. And so people now, or companies now, are looking at trying to transform themselves digitally, whether it's adding new channels of interaction or whether it's doing all this process automation in the back end. So I think with that awareness, awareness and then change, especially, just throwing this one out here, look what happened with COVID. We moved millions and millions of agents to the cloud almost overnight and really kind of upset the norm to be looking at what should we be purchasing now? What do we need to be doing in the future? I think it shook a lot of people up. So what I think is going to happen is that now that we've been doing all of the evangelizing and all of the promotion and all of the awareness, and people have had to change, and a lot of them have moved to the cloud and will continue to do so, that you're going to see the purchasing of more of the process automation, more of the virtual assistants, making the customer-facing endpoints more intelligent. And one of the coolest things is that when you have the analytics, the data lakes, all of the other things to support the massive amount of information that we get out of customer interactions, whether it's using speech analytics on recorded calls or chats or any of the other information that we can pull, you're going to be seeing a lot more continuous innovation, continuous improvement on all metrics, whether it's CSAT because their customers are having better experience, whether it's reduced costs, whether it's just all sorts of stuff. I really think that people are, now that we've gotten over this, we're still in COVID, but while we've gotten over the initial bump of having to shake the industry up, that people's investment priorities and awareness of where they're going are really going to finally start coming to fruition.
That's interesting. And I've noticed recently just looking at public information in terms of, some of what we talked about on our earnings and how well Five9's did, seems like cloud contact center is really hitting a mainstream and really, sales are peaking hugely at the moment. So I think, and to me, that's sort of a baseline for all of this stuff. If you're not in the cloud, it's going to be really hard to do a lot of that. So I think that kind of backs up what you're talking about a little bit.
Yeah, I have to admit that back in 2012, I was a Prem girl, and we had somebody covering cloud, and I went into this kicking and screaming. And I still promote Prem and hybrid, because cloud isn't everything to everybody. Because you may think about how many millions and millions of contact centers we have out there, but absolutely it is an enabler to being able to add things on quickly and take advantage of some of the things that are occurring.
Yeah, absolutely. And thinking about this continuous improvement idea, I think that's really where cloud comes in. It's being able to work agilely and being able to experiment and push forward these areas of improvement in a way that are incremental and just incrementally improving day after day, week after week, month after month. How would a company get started, or what would you say are the most important things when it comes to AI, RPA, and identifying areas to move forward with? What do they need organizationally as well as from a technology perspective?
So, because sometimes AI still seems blue sky to some people, you can start small and really start small. Let's just take a look at something like RPA. Find out where it is that. Let's look at a bigger RPA. So when you have projects like in accounting or where you're going to be deploying bots, it really does help to start small. Make sure you can do it in that on. And with process automation in the contact center, it's the same thing. What areas do agents stumble with, whether or not it's address changes or whether it's having to click through multiple screens to maybe find a shipping status or any of those things. There are so many areas to look at during an agent's day that can be automated. And so any company that is thinking, AI with quotes around it, there's lots of components that at the end can be combined together to make this broader digital transformation. But there's so many places to start. It's like, for example, if you still have a dumb IVR out there with, how may I help you, or it's just giving you a bunch of trees, you've got problems. And especially if it's, as our favorite Max would probably laugh at this, but, please listen carefully as our menu options change. Oh my God.
I heard one.
So bad.
I heard one yesterday. It was options 1 through 7. 7 was other, which was another option 1 through 7. So they had a 14 question main menu on the IVR. And it was just like,
wow.
It's like, okay, shoot me now. So let's just start from there. I mean, if you're automatically lowering CSAT because your customers are calling in and that's what they're getting, intelligent virtual assistant, a virtual assistant, even speech enabling an IVR, those are small things to look at. And if maybe you want to add chat and maybe you want to add, a virtual chat agent, those are really, it's just like, look at what you have now and start looking at things about, where are the breakpoints? Where can we smooth this out? What are our customers asking for? And we know that our customers are asking for more automation. We know that anybody, that's 30 years and younger is so used to using speech now, especially with, thank you, Apple and Google and everybody for creating those products in home. People are just used to it. So it doesn't make sense to not have it. And then, start looking at other areas of improvement. Anything you can do, we already know that CX and EX are so entwined. Anything you can do to improve that the agent's workday, is going to just spill over, onto the customer. But something that, just when you were asking me this question before about where we're heading, and we were talking about incremental improvements, there's just the next level that's coming out and has already started is with these maturing technologies are things like we've seen sort of a pushback in the press and sometimes with customers about, well, our AI is going to take over our jobs and maybe I want to talk to a real person. And that's just natural. So the thing is that we have a digital workforce out there and you need to marry the two. And so making, offloading the repetitive stuff that you can with virtual assistants and with process automation, and then saving the more complex inquiries that need that human touch is very important. We've been talking about this for a couple of years, but it's the other technologies that companies are starting to add to really add value. Emotion detection, sentiment analysis. There's all sorts of solutions out there that you can get from third parties or their own, science teams that will make those automations more intelligent and more, and also feed the agent more information about the conversations that they then have. So if you have a virtual assistant out there that has the capabilities to, with speech analytics and everything, to do sentiment analysis, and then you have to transfer that person to a live agent, how much better is that interaction going to be if they know that this customer is pissed off? Or if they have a virtual assistant sitting next to them that is checking what's happening during that interaction and can actually, put a smiley face up on the screen because all of a sudden they can tell that the conversation is going in the right direction. There's this blending of these really cool technologies that will enable us to understand how to improve those conversations. And then, of course, on the back end, all of the analytics that go into seeing what happened during those customer interactions then can be used in sort of a continuous feedback loop to improve both the automated assistance and all of the information for performance management and other stuff that we use to, operationally within the contact center. So I think it's just really cool what's coming down the pike here.
Yes, absolutely. And, as I think about the digital agents being part of your workforce, it really opens your eyes because there's different jobs out there. You still have your human agents, but then you've got all of those jobs that got created to manage these digital agents, to optimize these digital agents. So what are you seeing out there from just new jobs and how to manage that digital aspect of your workforce?
So that's interesting. I don't know the answer to that question, really. I don't know about new jobs being created because I see that, okay, I'm going to answer your question with the same sort of thing. Part of the tools that we're creating and part of the use of these technologies is to give more information, not just to the agents, but the supervisors. Mm-hmm. So yes, in a classic RPA sense, you have, centers of excellence and you have groups that are managing bots. But when you get into the contact center, you also need to you should be able to treat and manage the workforce of those bots the way that you manage your live agents. So to get that same sort of analytics of, well, how, are people abandoning when they're talking to a virtual assistant? And just same thing, is it because they didn't get their questions answered? Or is it because they're turned off by having a virtual assistant talk to them? And so we're going to use the same tools that we do on the live workforce on the digital workforce. And same sort of things with workforce management. Do you need, more virtual assistants online? Do you need, more virtual agents? So I don't know if that answered, if that's where you were going or not.
Yeah, that's very insightful. Go ahead, Max.
I'm sorry, my mind's a little bit blown. So I'm going to have, I'm going to be like varying my capacity of the virtual agents. And I guess that makes sense because I could, if I'm the vendor, I can give you cheaper licensing if you kind of shrink and grow as needed. I don't even have a question there.
Well,
I just had to stop. You're bending my mind a little with that.
yeah, like I can't go into specifics. I mean, it's all into individual licensing by vendor and all that sort of stuff. But think about what happens with BCDR and when we have to all of a sudden, when we were shifting all the agents to the cloud, but you sometimes have the need for the virtual assistants to offload when you have surge and you don't have enough of real agents. Or sorry, live agents. Bots. The bots are going to be hurt by that
Bots are real.
statement.
Bots are people.
Yeah, bots are real. Bots are people. They're virtual workers too. But no, seriously, think about it. And any of the same scenarios that we've had. What happens if shipping routes are disrupted from a hurricane, or during open enrollment something happens, or any of those Christmas holiday seasons when something happens, and you say, you know what, maybe we can offload more of this to a virtual workforce because we just don't have enough workers right now. I don't know. And the sky's the limit. I mean, it's out there. We can do it.
Yeah, and think about workforce management and what that looks like in terms of forecasting your bots versus your human agents. What's ideal? What's acceptable? I mean, just like you said, Nancy, the sky's the limit on this, and just rethinking the norms when you start thinking about bots being a different type of agent.
Yeah. There's something else though that when we talk about like infusing AI across the customer contact landscape, then we hadn't even talked about the employing AI for doing some of for improving the actual tools we use for customer interaction management, performance management. When you think about doing things, I'll give you two examples. Now we just absolutely have the capability of using AI to do forecasting. So where it used to be, you struggled with spreadsheets, and then now we have some great WFM packages out there. When you start applying what-if scenarios at lightning speed, that will give you, however many iterations of, if we add this many agents at this time, what's going to happen? And that can do scheduling, and that can allow live agents to put in requests about when they want time off and have the system do it. And then it just gets okayed automatically or gets okayed by a manager. We couldn't do that 5 years ago, and we can do that now. And then the other example is outbound. I mean, we used to just do blasting outbound dialing, and now we have, proactive, interactive campaigns that are engaging customers. And when you apply things like machine learning to lists, then you've got all sorts of interesting potential there. For example, why waste your time in an outbound campaign to get donations when on just everybody on a list? Why not sort the list based on all sorts of things for propensity to buy, or propensity to donate, or region, or any of these outside factors you can get from these different databases, and apply some real intelligence to those campaigns? Now you're not wasting the time of people who may not be interested, and you're really targeting those people that are. So there's just all sorts of really fascinating ways to use these technologies that offload the tedious, time-consuming, and error-prone things that we've had to do in all aspects of the contact center.
Do you have a framework? One of the things that struck me in this conversation is all the domains, if you will, that these bots will work in. I mean, you've talked about self-service and agent assistant and scheduling and RPA. Is there do you have a framework of, these are kind of the domains where you see it, or is it just so amorphous at the moment that you can't really put a framework to it yet?
I'm trying to put a framework around that question.
Sorry.
That's like asking me to look in my brain. No, I see it across. That's why I said I would think when we were chatting before the call, but I've used this phrase, and using AI across the customer contact landscape so many times I can say it in my sleep. It is the judicious application of artificial intelligence, and underneath that umbrella, speech technologies and all of this other stuff that are really being applied to almost every single aspect of the contact center and customer care. So there really isn't a framework. I mean, we can talk at a high level like we have been about process automation and what that means. But let's look at something else. How about voice biometrics for use for fraud detection, and machine learning and speech analytics to go through and see if for potential fraud, and running voice prints, or using machine learning to go through and find out if when we're being hammered by a fraudster trying to get around a live agent. That's another whole category.
Yeah.
But think about that. It offloads the agent. And at the end of the day, the agent is no longer responsible for being the gatekeeper to someone who, the weak link in the contact center is the agent when someone is trying to do unlawful things.
Right.
And and how stressful is that for the agent? So if you can automate that and then do intelligent routing, say, you know what, we're pretty sure we know who this person is, and we're going to, send them off to a fraud management queue. The agent never knows that person was even trying to get in.
Right.
In a lot of cases. So it's I think it applies to every single aspect. I
got to say, I think this was one of my biggest learnings today is the breadth. I've run around and say, oh, it's so much more than bots. There's a lot of breadth here, but you've kind of opened me to a level of breadth I hadn't been thinking about before.
Oh, well, okay. That's good. It's one of my favorite topics. Yeah, there's more. There's just so many aspects out there, but anybody listening to this, I don't want to overwhelm them. The thing is that solution providers have these options, and they can explain any component and where are your pain points. Are you trying to reduce cost? If you're trying to reduce costs, then offloading and make your customers happy. Then offloading, as we know, the part. Well, let me talk about one other aspect. It's not just offloading, which is how we got into IVR in the first place. That a lot of people do like to self-serve, and this isn't just self-serve like we started off with IVR with, I want to check my bank balance. A lot of people just want to do it themselves, and that's why they use, Siri, or they use a virtual agent. But the other thing is that you then take those intelligent virtual agents, or the ones that were being used in the contact center, and you start doing things like having it dip into knowledge databases and transcribe calls and do post-call work on behalf of the agent. Of course, having the agent check, just verify that's what really happened during the call. But now you're starting to build, tribal knowledge and other things from agent interactions, and things just get smarter over time. So there's a level of intelligence that then not only helps the agent, but helps the customer, because the bots and the virtual agents are able to handle, a deeper inquiry. And people actually, they do like calling, they do like talking, we know that. But they also like getting things done on their own and quickly. Right. So it's just kind of a win-win.
That's great. Well, we're pretty close to time here. Joanna, do you have any last question you want to ask Nancy, or?
I think that this was a great conversation. And, just thinking about just the overall maturity, not just of the contact center organization, but the entire organization with AI and automation and leveraging both the front office and back office together just enhances that customer experience even that much more. Nancy, any closing thoughts for you?
Yeah, I want to say it's real. There's some of my colleagues out there who have, I spend all day in the contact center, and I happen to have this, love of all of the, the linguistic aspects and the AI aspects. But there are hundreds of companies out there doing all of the things that we just talked about. Many who partner with your company and other companies. Some who are, many who are ripe for acquisition, which is one of the ways that we feed, the ability to get the talent and the technology and to improve our product sets, right? So this isn't why I brought this up was that it's not that it's blue sky. It's not that there's just a few companies doing that. When I say maturing, and I'm not emerging technologies like everybody else said, maturing technologies, because we've been in speech now for 40 plus 50 years, that it's real. It's just a matter of either developing it or partnering with it. So I think the future is really exciting.
I do too. And thank you for the glance into it, Nancy. Really enjoyed this conversation. Time just flew by.
Yeah, I did too.
So,
Yes,
thank you guys for inviting me.
Yeah, totally appreciate it. Thanks a whole lot. Talk to you soon.